Yeah. So I'm just reading a message, an overview of what we're doing. So this is a live stream. I kind of thought I gave Michael a shout and said, why don't I just live stream while I'm working on personal projects? Because I'm always doing it. And I kind of thought it'd be a good idea to kind of not, rather than going through every step. It's not like the workshop. It's more like while I'm working, if you have some spare time, you can kind of watch me work. So what I'm doing right now is I'm taking this project here. You'll have to excuse me if I'm rubbish at streaming. This is the first time I've streamed. So if I don't answer your questions fast enough or whatever, I'm kind of like, I'm looking at a lot of things on my screen. So I'm taking my favorite project, All the Things, which is this one here. And I'm rebuilding them in small mini scenes. So this is a small little pond that I'm building. It belongs to the defense scene. I wanted to have this idea of a cannonball or a... Let me see if I can find it super quick. So I wanted one of these balloons here to drop a bomb on the ground and it would kind of like stick in like dough. But I'm actually going to have it hit the water. So the water is going to be a big challenge for me to animate. So I'm going to try that and then have all the lily pads kind of like move with it and kind of like slosh around. I just want to go back to an old project and then just try and give it some more life. So this is another one. So these cannons here I built. I never reused them. I made all these models and I never used them. I really like this bear trap, but that never appeared in the final piece. I'm going to take the ideas that never made it through, and I'm restyling them in a new kind of chunkier style. So you can see the if I just go up, if I just play this for a second, so you can see that there's these trees in the background. They're really tall. That was like the art direction we're going with. But with this one, I'm going to go with like super chunky, small style ones. And I'm playing with the the tapers to get different looks. So I'm not too sure on if I like that really kind of wide bottom and tight top, because when I look at them in the viewport here with the wireframes, they look really nice. But when I render them, they come out really kind of messy. So I'm not sure if I'll keep that look or not. So I'm just like playing around here. Let me just check if there's any more messages. So yeah, that's all this is I'm just kind of like working on some old work in a new way. So yeah, this was going to be a kind of a surprise kind of thing. We were going to like launch a streaming workshop every now and again, and we were supposed to be just testing it out, and now we're doing it. So I don't know how this is going to end at all. Yeah. So you can see I'm not doing the exact blocking out that I usually do. I've gone and used a bool and everything for here because this is going to be really difficult to work with. Because I need the water to be able to animate separately. So I just thought if the water shape has to change to accommodate for more room, I kept it as a bool for now. So it's just a big bool for now, because I'm just not sure if I'm happy with what's going to happen, if I have enough space to work with here, because I'm going to have a big like cannonball like drop in with sound effects. It's just going to come right down here and it's going to like splash, and then the water is going to crown upwards and everything. I'm just not sure if I have enough here or not, if I have to like remove all this or not. But the reason I have this in here is it feels a bit dull if it's just water and bricks up to it. Oh, hey Jeff, man. Thanks very much. We've been chatting a bit on Twitter, I think. I'm chatting to everyone everywhere. But yeah, you can see I'm kind of like changing up the style a little bit from All the Things. All the Things has a very kind of a clean look, while this is much more cartoony. I mean, like these reeds are ridiculous looking. They're all very editable, so I can kind of like change the bend. And I do have I'm doing my usual thing, like in the workshop, adding volume to something by thickening it. I prefer it to be tapered in. I just think it looks nicer. But for this style, it doesn't work. You can see it kind of like gets very lost. So the bulge just allows me to Usually when I'm working on something, I will just go ahead and make the cut and just leave it in. But here it kind of like gives me a chance to kind of go back and forth, decide if I like it or not. So that's one thing we didn't kind of cover a lot in the workshop is how much I use deformers. When I'm unsure of how I want something to look, you'll see all these like deformers everywhere, and I even have a layer deformers. So you can see there's actually quite a lot in the scene. I just dropped them and I kind of get rid of them. If I have a look at one of these, so there's a bulge deformer, a taper, which is tapering the end of it off, and then there's a bend, which is controlling the bend. And it depends on the order of where everything appears. The bottom stack gets done first, I think. But yeah, I think actually the hardest thing to make on this scene so far were actually these lily pads. I'm not overly happy with them. This topology here, it renders okay. You know, you don't see too bad. Like it has that. I want to have that little indent, so you have that kind of like lip. But these details you don't really see from. See what I'm doing is I'm not sure if when these animate, when the bomb come down and hit the water, if they're going to stick to the surface and flow with it, which will be really hard, or if they're going to kind of like get flipped up in the air like coins, and if you're going to see the bottom of them. So that's why I've added this little like this little kind of like extra flourish of a detail here. If they do flip, you will see them. I'm not sure what to do with them. They would look nicer if they stay to the surface of the water as they're kind of like sloshing around, but it's going to be like a ton of extra work. I'm not even sure how I'm going to do that. But if they kind of like all get like thrown into the air and they're flipping around, that'll make it like far easier to sort out. They could even like get thrown into the air and stack differently. They could like stack into. No, I'm losing it here. That's not going to be great. Yeah, so you can see I'm just blocking this out and I'm trying to decide what's looking good or not. So the other one I want to build is I'm going to reuse these pieces and I'm going to make let me see if I have it here. So that's the pond. That's how it looked as a kind of a test render. And that's the cannon right there. So now these aren't the final looks. I'm just trying out some shaders to see how it goes. I need to open my reference folder here. So you're gonna see a super messy. Let's see. Dropbox, personal projects. Yeah, I'm kind of going with something like that. So you can see that I'm taking different influences from different things. I'm having chunky trees in one, and then I'm having like this thick pond outline in another. I really like these lily pads as well. I don't know how I'll get this really nice water going. I probably won't even. And then I'm mixing that with this here, which I really like. I want to make my tree stump into a house. I might add an axe, I might not. I don't know. I'll see. And then I'm going to animate it with. This is just some water reference that I found. Ooh, it's gone. Oh no, it's gone. So this is just some water reference that I found just on Envato. And what I plan to do is I plan to draw it out on my iPad Pro. So I'm not much of a 2D animator, but I'm going to try and draw it out in Procreate and animate each frame, and then bring the frames into ZBrush and sculpt all the layers, sculpt every frame so that it'll look like 2D or it'll look like stop motion water, because I've tried doing like the ripple deformer and all that and it just didn't look great. So I'm actually going to try and sculpt every frame of the water splash. It'll be a big job, but I think there's certain things that you can kind of pull off that'll look like a nice effect. And I think like sometimes they take a lot of work, but they look good if you kind of put the time in. I think it's going to look good. If I can't make it work, I'll just like drop this whole scene and just, I don't know, have something hop from like lily pad to lily pad and just kind of like cheat it. Oh, that's cool. I'm really glad you learned a lot, Brandon. Yeah, your work turned out amazing. I was chatting with Michael, and there's so many times when I'm looking at you guys' work, and I'm like, did they copy my models across into their files? I'm staring at them. I'm like, that looks like my work. I'm like so confused by it. I'm like, I swear that looks like my work. No, I'm blown away by the work. I know I keep saying it, and it sounds like I'm just copy pasting messages, but I truly am like amazed by the work you guys are producing. Is there anything I can share about this? So you can see here, this is maybe something you might find interesting. You know, I'm looking for a style. This kind of like this actual hatch here took me the longest time to get right. And then this piece here, I was just chatting with Michael. These chips were super difficult to work on. Like you would just think you would just bring in some of these points and kind of like. Actually, I'll try and cut a chip into it so you can see how tricky this was to work on. So I'll try and add one more chip here and see how we get on with it. So again, I would duplicate it just in case this goes horribly wrong. I'm using the Solo now. I've never used it before until the workshop. So that's my new kind of like, I learned that from you guys. And we go ahead and we just make a mess of this. So what I tend to do a lot with my work when I'm experimenting is I make a mess, I don't care, and I will fix it up later if I need to. So I can't even remember how I did this. I think I deleted that. And I double clicked these edges. You can see now that our axis point is just not in a desirable place. So we're just going to have to kind of like click and drag it down. It kind of goes everywhere. Scaling it in. I'm going to move it over to whoops, I need a bit more space here. Normal. That works better. And then I'm just going to close polygon hole. And I'm just going to clean up our cuts. And then I'm going to so this is like a flat spot. It's all like the edges have been pulled down into this like square shape, and then they're kind of like been stitched across. So once we have the geometry connected, I can dissolve this. And then I'm going to introduce the loop cut again. Nope, it's not letting me. So I'll just cut to about there. So this is kind of controlling how tight it is. Actually, before I put that cut in, so that's how it looks. You can see this is not really taught in the workshop as in how to create clean topology, because this is very hard to create so cleanly. The workshop stayed with like blocky square objects, which was easier to work with. So that's already put the cut deeper in. We're actually missing our control loop on the outside. So the way I found out to do this, which is a bit messy, is I introduced another loop cut there. Double click this loop and then I brought that up. Oh, this is so messy. So you can see this wouldn't be ideal to teach in a workshop. It's kind of like, it's sloppy. It just takes a while to clean up. And you have to move around so much in 3D. I'm trying to make sure everything's tidy-ish. Because again, this isn't a client piece. This is just me kind of like messing about, trying new looks, seeing if I can get this kind of chip effect going on. It looks okay. I prefer the chips on this side because it's going to. I know my camera is going to render from this angle, so I know when it renders, you're going to see them on that side. It's not actually awful looking. But you can see because we worked with 16, or did I do 24 on this? I'm not sure. But the amount of cuts we put in is restricting to how wide these, chips are apart. You don't want to make too many of these. Of course, you could as well if you wanted to add another chip on the inside. You could just, now this might be a bit tricky because of the angle we're facing at, but you could just grab all that, split that away, and then rotate this piece of geometry around to maybe here. You can delete this away, and then you can just weld them points into here, and you'll have your duplicated chip on another side. The only reason I can't do this is because it's off center and it's off axis. If I kept it nice and straight and lined up, it would have been much easier to work it in. But yeah, I mean, like these little pieces, they were a little bit. I really wish I could push this back a bit more. just don't like that kind of like shape I'm getting here. I need more loops going through here, I think. Yeah, I think I need another loop actually running through like that. That would kind of clean it all up. But I mean, again, this is just some personal work, and I'm just messing about with it. I'm not trying too hard. I mean, like, it renders okay, but kind of does its job, I guess. If you're wondering how these trees were made, they're actually how are these trees made? Behance. So these trees are actually these tiles, and they're kind of, in a way, I figured out how to stitch them across over and over, until I got to, let me just, solo off. I'll have to get used to that. So you can see they're actually, if you actually look pretty close, you can see they're just roof tiles, and they're just stitched across. If I just turn off Q, so they're stitched around here and they're welded, and then there's all these topology lines just drawn across, and it's cleaned up, and they kind of end like that. This piece is just capped off. I kind of reduced down the amount of polys, and then this is just a cylinder, and it's just connected down onto the top. Let me just see if there's any more questions. Ooh. Yeah, I'm glad you like seeing the slop. It is it stays messy for the longest time. I mean, like, when I'm making my work, it's just it's like everything's hacked and thrown around everywhere. You can see I haven't even named everything. If I jump over to the pond scene, like, okay, I've named a few things there. Yeah, like, everything's just cylinders, and I just dropped these cylinders in. They're all 36 still. They're not the final look. I don't like the way this is just like a straight line right up to it, and then it kind of curves away. I want to add a bit more flow through the scene. So I want the water to have a nice flowing feeling, and then I would like these to kind of like flow out. So when I had them to there, then I had this free up space or something to use. So I just don't like this straight line. I think it's just a bit boring. So I'm just kind of looking at that. Like, I like the way these all kind of like face different ways. These don't look great facing the camera like this, so I'll have to figure out what to do with them. The bridge is obviously going to be much more, you know, chunky in a while, and then there'll be railings as well. I was playing around with the idea of having a pier going on in here, and then a little boat, but I don't know. I'm going to make this into a little house, obviously. And there'll be like a chimney there. And you can see I kind of like, I'm purposely like art directing. I'm not like, you know, I just have these rings coming up. They're not even concentric. They are concentric. They don't even swirl. I was going to just draw a swirly line in ZBrush and kind of like use it as a map, but I actually like how kind of simple that looks. Someone told me it looks like a Rolo. If you know what a Rolo is, it's like a sweet. Ooh, okay, that's weird. I've got ice palms turned on and I'm seeing double the amount of... that's why I'm seeing that. So yeah, I think actually what I'll work on now while you're here is the bridge. So I'm going to pull that up to the top there. So this is just the base piece. I'm not even sure how this is going to go. I haven't even thought this out fully. I know I've made bridges before in this style for clients, and it's always been a little bit of a nightmare. Kind of keeping things looking clean. I don't know, I'd probably prefer spaces between each of them. Yeah. Right. I'm just trying to decide how wide I want each plank of wood. because everything's quite chunky. If I start using like really thin planks, like if I start making that into a plank of wood, it's just too simple looking. Like, let me pull up another reference here that I'm finding useful. This one. So I really like this. These are like super chunky details. I absolutely love this idea of these style brickworks. I think it's great. But you can see here everything's really thick and chunky. It's got like a ton of weight to it. Like, it looks like it's really heavy, and those metal rings look really cool. So I'm trying to go with a style like this of very large shapes, and these sizes don't get too lost in this overall image. I think everything is nicely sized. Like, the smallest detail is about the size of these bolts, and things don't get down too smaller than that. So you'd kind of understand a bolt is about as small as you'd get it. So I'm just trying to be aware of how little I want these to get. So I'm thinking my planks of wood, if I made that into a group, and then that. It's a lot of visualizing before you actually go ahead and take the plunge. This is not like the workshop. It's kind of like it's edited and everything's like done a few times in practice. This is like me like staring at this. I'll just stare at my screen and I'm like, do I like the idea of 2 or 3? I think I'll go with 3. All right. Let's split that away. And I'm going to hide the bridge for now and extrude. Actually, no, I will turn that on. Can I X-ray that? Yes. Sweet. I can. Extrude. Caps turned on, and they're going to extrude inwards. We're getting results. Not the results I wanted. Inner extrude. Preserve groups. Invert and delete. Okay, how thick do I want this wood now is the next question. So I'm going with -2.8. So I know all my polys will be inverted when I select them. I'm okay with that. I know how to fix it. I'm not going to freak out. I don't know if you can hear the snoring dog. He's sleeping away back there. So inner extrude, apply. Inner extrude and apply. It's going to keep applying the same amount. And have I got 3 on the other side? Please, I haven't even planned this out. Please have 3. No. No. 1 extra. Inner extrude and apply. Okay, I'm going to split those away and we'll figure out what to do. Grab all those, extrude, and apply this as well. So we'll merge those for now. And I think we will just, as an object, no. Oh man. Oh no, I wish I didn't do this. It's because I have it facing the wrong way. I really just don't have it facing the right way. I'm going to rotate this. So I'm watching, as I'm rotating, I'm watching this blue line here that I'm highlighting. I'm watching it line up against this line. So that's not great. I can of course move it. How well does that red line line up? Okay, that'll work for us. It's just a temporary thing. Again, I'm not being too precious about all this. Might just scale it upwards and get a bit more height out of this bridge. Okay, so they're my kind of like planks of wood. Again, I'm constantly spinning around just to see how I feel about it. I actually prefer it having a little bit of height rather than being a perfect circle. So again, that was like something unplanned, but it just turned out pretty nice. Polygon, is there a polygon there? Yeah, I'm gonna just drag that down. So that plank of wood is just a little bit longer than the other ones. Oh, it'd be nicer if they weren't all the same size. Damn it. It'd be nicer if they weren't all the exact same size. Right. So the camera's going to be from this angle here. So you can see 3, 3. Let's make this one a little bit shorter because this is like the one the viewer is looking at the most. So let's just snip off like that piece and that piece. Make it noticeable. Again, I'm going to make a copy. Bridge temp. Okay. Again. I should be naming things for you guys to be able to see it a lot easier. But yeah, this is how I usually work, just really kind of messy. Close polygon hole. Okay. I'm going to turn this back on so now I have a guide to work within. So I know where I need to be kind of working-ish towards. Maybe I'll extrude it actually, give it a whole new piece of geometry. So again, I'm just eyeballing it. I'm just watching it get a little bit closer. I'm using the older bridge as a kind of a guide to work within. I'll turn that off. So now we have planks of wood in varying sizes. So this is quite big, quite narrow, quite big. Will we go narrow again on this one? It's kind of it's getting a little bit too repetitive. Then you got big, small, big, small. It's not the most exciting. Sure, we'll do it for now. I'll grab this. This is now going to be a huge piece of wood. Let's turn on our guide so we can see if we're way off. We're starting to creep out of it. Okay, turn that off. Okay, I'm happy with that. So now I've got a basic bridge. If I want to go back, I've got a varying size one. I'm going to make another copy of it. I make like tons of copies of stuff. I'm going to start shifting things around a bit. So I'm going to select them all first and invert. Oops. So, okay, we're doing well now. So let's make this one normal. A bit longer. And shift it that way. This way. So the gaps are much too big at the moment. I'm trying to figure out if I want like metal brackets holding them together. Like actual like bolts coming up and around, kind of like this thing here. Just to exaggerate the whole, like how the bridge was built. Because I'm going for that kind of medieval look. That kind of like Clash of Clans, kind of like everything's made of thick wood and splintered wood and kind of metal and all that. So rather than just having like a bar in between or a support underneath it that's not very visible. I could have a support underneath like railway bridges, I guess. Let's move this one over this way. So we're starting to get a little bit of variation going. This one and this one. Whoops. Okay, we got a little bit more resolution now. Again, I do a lot of spinning before I actually commit to doing anything, so if it does look a bit boring, I'm just making sure I'm happy with how things are developing. Bevel. So it's unfortunate that bevel isn't kind of like a percentage of, like, you know, like if I keep pushing this to get this one looking right, you can see here it hasn't gone far enough, so it's a shame it just doesn't do that. So I'm going to go with these ones, which are kind of similar. These are all the same size. Maybe actually making a plank of wood slightly... Oh yeah, that might be nice. I'm just going to reset that. Sorry if I didn't explain. I'm going to go raise that one up, drop that one down. I guess drop it down. It's because we only have like, 5. We're kind of getting similar looking patterns happening. I'm not overly crazy on that idea. If I were to render that, how would it look? Yeah, looks alright. So I know I'm missing a loop on this as well. That's why I'm getting that weird kind of like weird shading issue. But I'm just trying to work out if the details I'm doing are wrong. Like if the camera angle is going to be here, are we actually able to see anything? Should the bridge be more like that so you can see it easier? But then, like that'd be nice. That'd be the nicest way to have it. I guess we could just try spin the whole thing. I just don't like how that faces the camera. It's just nicer when these face the camera this way. Maybe that way? Now I feel completely disorientated. I do like how the bridge looks that way. This reads nicer actually. This kind of reads going around that way now, and then it doesn't matter that goes off straight. I'm just freaked out because I wasn't used to working this angle. Do I like the shape of everything? I really don't like how the reeds look now. They just look messy. They look lost. I'm just doing thinking. Yeah. I'm trying to decide what do I want the viewer to see. What do I want them to appreciate the most? And I really like how this bridge is coming along. I think it's got potential to look nicer as well. What I'm going to do with the bridge is if I actually open a personal project of mine, let me see. Nope, wrong one again. Personal projects. Courage. Nope. I'm just going to take a while to load. Not the windmill. Frontier. So what I'm going to do is I'll just delete these. So the ends of these wood are quite kind of like blocky at the moment, but my plan is to do something like this. Frontier wagon. So you can see I'm going to add like all this jagged chipped wood effect to it. So it's kind of like going to be a style halfway between all the things and this derailed project that I'm working on. You can see this is a little bit more cartoony than all the things. Like everything's a little bit chunkier, but everything's kind of like got a little bit more thickness and volume. But again, it's still quite realistic in a way. It doesn't have the same aesthetic as the workshop. The workshop's probably, if you had a slider and you could slide from cartoony to real, workshop's a bit more here, all the things here, this derailed project here, and then this all the things miniseries is pushed more towards cartoony shapes. That's the way I see it anyways. Most people probably look at it and think, oh, that looks the same. But I would disagree. Yeah, I like this angle and I hate that bridge angle. Yeah, that's something I'm going to have to think about a bit and figure it out. Because I like how this is coming along. Render setup. I'll jump over to a render. Sure thing. Sorry if I'm not checking the chat. I've got so many versions of everything. I might have a render setup of this. Wasn't expecting that. Okay, let's jump to personal projects. So you can see I got like a ton of backups as well as incremental saves, because I always like lose stuff. So it's going a little bit slower because it's loading in all the shaders. Why is that still there? God damn it. Okay, we'll render with this then. Yeah, so now I've got like the pond showing up. Okay, I'm gonna delete that. Stop. I'm gonna delete that. Let me see. So my render setup. Oh, I'm streaming. Didn't even know he was there. Sorry about that. Okay, so render setup. So again, I've got like a million cameras. Render setup. Okay, that's a lot of lights, but not all these lights are turned on, are they? No. I'll delete these away so they're not confusing us. So the lighting again, I don't go with left, right, and top. I just find that really boring. I just don't find it gives a nice result. So I generally have like huge lights in the scene, because the bigger the lights, the softer the shadows you're getting. It really makes things look a lot more kind of toy-like. So to create much softer shadows. So let's just actually turn off all the lights and hit render. The camera I'm using is this one here. So I've set it up so that it's, let me see, focal length is 200. So the camera's actually quite far away, and then I've pulled it way out. So if I put this at 36 like it normally is, and then I zoom in, I'm gonna have to delete this. If I zoom in, you kind of get that look. You kind of get this kind of like the Canon's really close to the camera. It's really close to the lens, but I wanted to kind of like flatten off. I really wanted to be a cartoony look. So I pull the camera really far out, and then I will zoom in a lot. And it's really squishing things down. You get that kind of like flattened look. You can see the difference. If I just duplicate this, let's just jump between the difference here. So if I put this back to 36, zoom in. So there's the difference. I just think this is kind of like, it's really forced and fisheye, but this is the render I prefer to use. It kind of like, it brings everything forward, it flattens everything off, and it makes it look more like a graphic kind of an illustration. So there's the difference between that one and that one. That's the one I'm working with. So that's the first thing I do, is get the camera set up right. I make sure I have everything facing the way I want. I would really like the viewer to be able to see this detail at the back, so I'm not overly happy with that. Yeah, I have not a left and right, but almost like a left and right this way. So you are going to miss some light falling onto the object on the front. So I then introduce another one here at the side slightly, and then a big overhead one. So let's turn on our renders. Turn on light by light and see what happens. Ooh, too big. I'm using Octane 4.05, so I haven't got like the newer versions, because I'm cheap. I'm just going to close these. Oh, don't crash on me. Don't crash on me. It's going to take a while to set back up. Okay, I'll leave the subdivision surface turned off for now. So that's, if I label the lights, it'd be easier. All right, I do have them labeled. So that's the right light. You can see the difference in the colors as well. And the left light. The front light. So there's quite a lot of light coming from one side, and then this is just the overhead light to fill in the shadows. So I'm not letting it render through fully because it's just taking a while. So if we turn on the blue light, which I said I don't use, But that was a mistake. This is actually copied over from another scene, so I'm going to make this a slightly grayer color, because now we're letting the color of the shader come through. I'm just trying to catch the shapes of all the objects. I'm not really trying to, when I'm setting up the lighting, I'm not trying to light the object. I'm trying to light the shapes it's forming. Is this making any sense? What I'm trying to do? Like, I really like how this folds here. So I'm trying to let the viewer be drawn to that. I'm not just trying to like put light on everything and make sure there's no shadow. What I don't like what's happening is I just don't like the way this curve in here is getting really hit badly. If I turn this light back off, there's a shadow there. And there should be a shadow there because that's an extruded larger piece. By the light there and flattening off that shadow area, it looks like there's a highlight there now, and it's very strange. So that's something that's been bugging me with this render. I'm going to have to look at. That's just filling out the back. So let's see which light this is actually. If I just jump back out again, if I turn off all these lights, yeah, so that's that big one back there. So that's just kind of like what I find happens a lot with this setup, where I don't have them facing left and right, and there's not enough light casting across my background object. This thing gets very dirty. This big object back here, this ends up very dirty, without lights kind of like directly left and right. The way I go with, I'm gonna need to grab my doodle tool again so I can explain it a bit better. So this light is casting off that way, and this one's off this way. So this whole background object is getting kind of like ignored with light. So I find that if I have this light almost point down here into this area, and then you have light bouncing back, and it's almost like a halo behind the object. You can see here in the render what it's doing. It's just like a waterfall of light just falling down. And then these are just like to pick up the chips. I haven't really adjusted the light for this properly. I'm mostly having the light come from this side though. I just like it mostly on this side. I want it to be very bright, and then here to be just like, oops, wobbling, a little bit darker. So if I just let that render away. So I have the two kind of like light sources falling down either side of the tree, which I like. I don't like this won't be my final shader. As well, I'm careful with my clay shaders as well, because I know the strength of them can be too much against some of the light. Like this background is hugely white, but I plan to actually make it a darker color. Oh no. So I'll probably go with a darker color which soaks up a lot of the light, so it kind of like stops that kind of like intense kind of craziness happening. If I were to go even darker again, you can see now the light's kind of working a little bit better on the trees. But again, this is just me kind of like playing around with the shaders and all that and how it's turning out. This isn't kind of like my final light setup, but that's just usually what I do. And a lot of people ask, when they see the final image, they kind of like ask, how did you get that? And they think like the render settings will get it, or the light setup. There's actually a lot of work done in post as well. There's like steps all the way along that need to be taken to kind of get to the final look. I mean, like this looks nice now. It's kind of like you can be playing around with it for the longest time and it looks nice, and then when you get it into Photoshop, it's kind of like it needs a ton of work. Like, let me just see if I think I was actually color correcting some stuff in Photoshop, just messing around. Let's just see if we have anything here. Oh no. It must be going slower now because of the streaming. I can now kind of see what everyone's talking about when they're talking about the streaming, and it's slow. Okay, I'm gonna have to resize this so you can see it. So if you just give me a moment. There, I think you can see it all now. So yeah, that's how it's kind of looking in I have changed the background, but that's kind of how it looks. It kind of like this, kind of like, it did look nice in cinema as we were playing around with all our lights, as we were playing around with everything. It did look nice. Like there's the kind of the orange hue on everything. Let me just get rid of that one that has a depth of field. But yeah, I would then like, you know, end up with kind of a look like that, which it just kind of like makes it look a little bit more kind of, I'm going for that clay look, so I'm more careful to get more shadows and more scratches and more fingerprints out of it. So just super quick again. I just increased the brightness. Oh no, I actually brought down the brightness and up the contrast. I use a lot of adjustment layers, so you can see I'm just tweaking them slightly, like 8 and 5, 251. I'm not like moving them drastically like this to get really harsh looks. I'm it's just really kind of like softly doing these things. Like you can see here, the red channel, I'm not like doing this or this. It's kind of like just because I know I'm going to stack so many different adjustment layers on top that if I go too wild, it's just going to look really bad. So I kind of like tweak things. And then of course I can like slide the effect down as well if I don't really like it, or mask it off. I very rarely use vibrancy, but I felt it was needed for this one. Even though I can't see what it's doing now. And hue I use very little of. I like to really go crazy with color balance. Color balance is such a fun one to work with. Like if I just delete that actually and put in a new color balance, and so I would start with the midtones. So the midtones is the overall thing. Do I want it to look very blue, like it's nighttime, or very warmy yellow? Personally, I don't like a lot of green. I just don't like seeing a lot of green in an image. It kind of looks just muddy. So I try and knock that out. I don't go too purpley in hues, but I like to add a tiny tinge of it. So it's blue or red. Red gives a nice autumny look. But I know I'm going to be layering so many effects on top. I'm very careful with it. I jump to shadows next. Do I want warmer shadows or darker ones? Greeny, purpley. See, I'm just sliding back and forth to try and find what's I'm happy with. Highlights, always warm them up. Yeah, that looks it looks like you're kind of like, what I find with color balance, everything here looks like it's just kind of like clicked together and everything's kind of like just mushed. I don't know how to describe it, but it just looks like a big kind of sheen over everything, while this allows everything to kind of like separate out. This becomes a darker red shape. These become much lighter kind of peachy shapes. It just allows everything to kind of like pull apart a bit. I don't know if that's really obvious from here, but to me it kind of like helps everything be a little bit more individual. And then something I don't use very often are lookup tables. I don't have many of them. I've only got like 3 or 4. But yeah, that's kind of how I would go from, that to that. Let me just get rid of that. Yeah. And then I kind of fake depth of field as well. So I just duplicate it. Filter. What am I looking for? Tilt shift. And again, everything's really subtle. So I push this way down and down. Bring it to about 5 or 6. Up and up. And I'm just trying not to create anything that's just too jarring. I'll just go with that. And then I'll grab blur. And I just don't feel like this is like, I kind of like the tilt shift creates too obvious a strip across the middle. So I just try and like soften where it's not really working, just to try and add some discrepancies. Might blur that out because it's further away. I don't really like the way this is connecting here, so I'll blur that out so the viewer's not really focused on it. So yeah, that's how it originally looks, and that's how it kind of ends up looking. Yay. Oh my god, there's 21 people still watching. So yeah, that's kind of as far as this project is at the moment. And I don't know. I'm going to do one more piece. It's going to be a bear trap, and it's going to be kind of like an over the top bear trap. It'll spring up, and then like little spikes will come up. Again, the reason being, in this project, some unused ideas. The idea was when this tower, like the whole story behind this tower was, it's supposed to be like a nice peaceful, like defense tower, and then this butterfly comes along, like a crazy threat that it is, and it lands on, just lands on one piece of it, and it's like a car alarm just going wild. That's the whole like thought behind this project. Everything just kind of like pops out. It kind of goes too crazy. Just let me skip through. So as he lands, he sets off everything. Everything kind of goes over the top. But one thing I wanted to happen was I wanted all these tiles to flick up and all these like spikes to come out, like porcupine bits. But there was so many of them that it would have knocked everything else. It would have knocked the catapult away, and it would have knocked like the crossbow away. So we didn't use them. So I'm kind of going back and I'm reusing ideas that didn't make it true. So you can see all these spikes are supposed to kind of like come shooting out. I just really like the idea of these tiles kind of like, flicking up and kind of coming out. So in this new short piece, I'm going to have like a bear trap jump up, and then all these spikes kind of come up around it as well, just to kind of like enforce the idea of an over-the-top bear trap with another animation happening as well. So that's what I'm going to actually work on next. But I think I will need to plan that out. So for now, I'm going to leave the stream there. And if you guys have any more questions, I'll give you as best an answer as I can. Let me just read through some of these. There's a lot of bevel edges, yeah, Logan, there is. But yeah, let me just see if there's any more questions. So I'm just gonna sit back here. So yeah, this stream kind of like came out of nowhere. Definitely wasn't expecting to do it. Let me just check one thing while I'm waiting for questions. Any questions? Any questions? Yeah, I've been streaming now for like an hour and 20 minutes since the test has ran, so yeah, I can't believe so many of you showed up for this stream, to be honest. There'll definitely be more, yeah, if you're interested. The tree. So many questions all of a sudden. The tree is tricky. The tree is really difficult. It took me about 3 days to make that tree. And I just put a lot of time into it because I knew it was going to look good, and I knew like whenever a Cinema 4D artist makes a tree, it's always like a sphere on a stick. It's always or there's a noise deformer, and it's just like I wanted to make something that took time. So that was made with cloners. So I grabbed the tile shape. I'll show you how to quickly make a tile, just super quick, and then we'll kind of like work out very quickly how to merge it together. Let's just go super quick. I'll just show you how I made the tile, and then you'll kind of get an idea how I made it. So I'm making it editable. Is my screen still as big? Yes, it is. Oops. So when I was making this tile, I grabbed these 3 here, if I can grab it, pull them down, and then pull the middle one down. So we're kind of getting, that's not an extreme enough curve, because when I add the subdivision, it's going to soften it. I'm just rushing through this super quick. I'm not actually going to build everything. So I did that, and then I introduced some more cuts just like that. Grabbed the bend deformer and dropped it in. Just so you can see where the cuts are. So that's the kind of simple tile shape I had. I made that editable like that. Dropped it into a cloner, set it to radial, figured out which was the best axis to have it on. So just take a little bit of, no, oh my god, what am I doing wrong? Okay, I think I just built it like upside down, I think. But what I did then, once I had it at this shape, let me think, how did I get this to look right? So it's a lot, here we are. Okay, this is what I did. I kind of spin them around until I got the right angle. And I went for 6 on the top. Duplicate that, made the bit wider, tipped them back a bit, and made sure to increase the number. So I never just, I never just duplicated it. Made it wider again. Went for 14 this time, I think. And again, did this. And I kept going all the way down. And then I made them, once I was happy with the kind of how it was coming together as a cloned shape, and once everything was kind of like at the moment this isn't looking right, but once I was happy with it, let's just duplicate this, hide that. I just made them editable, and I started deleting what I didn't need. So I didn't need these up here, and then I just started kind of like welding them together, kind of like we did with in the workshop when we had the I think it was the bool object, or no, it was when you're making the little curved tile. You got it as close as you need it to be, and then you just start like joining up the points. So it's definitely a slow process. And it did take me a while to kind of like figure out how to get it right. I was, working in and out through all the geometry. I think I deleted this away. Wait a minute, did I even go away? I think I deleted those away like that. They're not deleting. I'm gonna have to merge. And then I think I grabbed the poly pen. I just started doing all these crazy things just to make the geometry connect. And then, like, it's not turning out perfectly right now, but I then cut through here. It just took quite a bit of time to kind of like get the right look. And then you're moving things down as well. And you're trying to keep it all flush. But it definitely did take a while to get this thing built. If I just drop that in. So I think I actually, maybe I introduced a new loop there and I connected them across. Let me jump back to the tree just to see how it looks. Where is it? Yeah, so I had them quite close as tiles. And then let me just delete away okay, now that the thing is turned off. Yeah, so they were like that. They were like tiles. Oops, sorry. They were like tiles just resting near each other. I did as much work as I could getting them close together. And then I just started like bridging across. And it's almost like a seamstress kind of like sewing across and just kind of connecting it into one shape. But man, that was not easy. And I mean, you can even see the issue here. Nope. This kind of like dips down here. You can see it kind of dips down because the topology is not perfect. So this edge here is quite indented into the mesh. You can see it goes down in. So when I turn on my subdivision surface, I'm actually getting these lines going up here, which I don't really like. I actually prefer if it was smooth. Some people think, oh, that's a really nice effect. I'm like, nah, I hate it. It's a mistake to me. But they're getting this weird kind of like messy looking areas. It definitely was difficult to get right. And I had to use something in the workshop we've never really talked about as well called, I think I was using restriction. I was using the restriction tag and I was using some other tag and it was softening things up and it wasn't softening other areas. But yeah, that was a difficult one to build, definitely. Oh, let me just have a look quick. Oh, more streams. Great, cool. The tower, no, the animation of the tower, in that short animation I showed you, that was animated frame by frame. Chris taught me how to animate, and I want to animate these. He never uses simulators. He never uses effectors. He kind of animates a clone or object the odd time, but everything is kind of like keyframed out with the F curve manager. So everything is done like frame by frame. So if I just open up an animation of mine, super quick, personal projects. Let's have a quick look at the frying pan animation I did. Animated and shaded. So it's going to play slowly because I have it on a subdivision. Yes. So there's lots of tricks happening in this kind of animation. I know this is not exactly what you asked for, but this is how it was animated with the tower. If I grab these tomato slices, so this may seem a little bit confusing. But there's actually, let me think. So yeah, it's a little bit confusing, but there's actually 6 tomato slices. 3 per motion. So the jumping up one is doing one thing and then it disappears. So yeah, there's a jump, spin, and flop. Here they are. So that's the jump tomato slice. Let me just turn off this camera. So there's lots of tricks going on with these animations. So that's the one just jumping up in the air. And you can see it's going from white because I have it selected. You can see I've selected it. It's not selected anymore because this spin animation has taken over. And I couldn't get that to land properly. So it's spinning on a helix. So I cut it using a display tag. Where's the display tag? Oh yeah, so you can see here it's going from on to off. It's just been switched off. And then this final animation is just a flop one. That's just placing down very gently. So there's lots of, like, that's how like a lot of that tower animation was done. My God. Like even with these sausages, if you have a look at them, as they spring upwards, there's bones inside them that kind of like make them go from tightly packed curls into tighter shapes. And if you actually watch them hit the frying pan as well, the bones kind of stretch outwards. And then these little ears are kind of like flopping as well. So yeah, that's the animation's all done kind of like frame by frame rather than any effectors. It just takes a kind of long time to kind of like learn when to bring in like hidden tricks and all that. AI, I don't use a ton of Illustrator. I actually find it's a bit quicker to just draw out splines in Cinema. The only times I use splines are like really complex shapes that I can't build. But I just find like once I'm working with a spline, I've got like a ton of points as well working with then. Yeah, I think we'll have to definitely do more streams. Yeah, thanks, Chris, man. Yeah, I mean, like, I'm still learning how to animate. I mean, I don't know what I'm doing most of the time. If I jump back to another quick piece, oh no, Dropbox, personal projects. No, sorry, Dropbox. 2019 dash no dash Behance. I've got so many files. Animation. Donut. Look how many files. yeah, so this was me just messing as well with things. I mean, like I just didn't know what I was doing, but I'm just trying to get more fluid animations. So this was kind of, people like this, how it was looking. So I'm just trying to do the same thing again for the water animation. I'm just trying to do a bit more fluid animation because it's definitely more of a challenge than making hard surfaces bounce. But yeah. Yeah, I'm glad you like the tree. I'll definitely have to do a workshop on how to do more trees. I love making trees because I just find like a sphere on a stick too easy. It's just a giant lollipop. I think like if you jump onto Pinterest, I'm always on Pinterest, but yeah, there's like oops. I think I've got like, I go for game art trees. Like there's so many great styles to build. There's so many challenges here. I mean, like I absolutely adore these trees back here. I just think they look so cute. I really want to make them. Like there's just so many more ideas. I mean, like even that looks approachable. This one, I've made a few palm trees as well. This Christmas tree, they look approachable. I mean, like I think they can totally be done. They just take a bit of time.